father sitting, and I'm thinking, shucks, what's that? I said, good evening. And he said, where you coming from? And I told him I met a friend. He said, it was nice for you to have told us that you were leaving in the night when everybody else was sleeping, right? I said, no, it wasn't. Now I'm thinking to myself, I wonder what my father's going to do here now. What he did, he decided he's going to ground me for 2 weeks. Not just 1 day, 2 weeks. He said, here's what I'm going to say to you. I'm not going to beat you, spank you, because, 16, 17 years old or whatever it is. He said, I am going to ground you for 2 weeks. So now don't come and ask us to allow you to go out with any of your friends after school. When your school's finished, you come straight home. And I know your school finishes at X amount of time. And I know when you want to come home early, you come home at this time. So the expectation that you've set for us is you come home by 4 o'clock. And you don't leave again for the rest of the day, unless you're going to church with us. Did you get that? You tell a teenage boy that he's not going to meet with his friend for a whole week, it's not a good experience. It's better than spanking you, because the spanking will wear off. Doesn't it wear off? Of course it does. It wears off. So for 2 weeks, I struggled with that. The discipline was extremely important for me at that point. And I learned then never to go out in the house anymore. Neither should I encourage anyone to meet me somewhere to get the same treatment if possible. Because I was going to do unto them, I don't want to be done with them as happened with me. May I say this to you too? Whenever you have a negative experience by something, caution the people and the friends that you have not to have the same experience also. Would you remember that, please? Please, as adults, we're influenced by a lot of other people too. Be very careful what kind of friends that we actually make. Let's hurry along here. Immediately is one of those things that you and I, Jesus said, you forsake me. Then it's immediately we talked about that. In the book of Luke, I want to just run through a couple of things there with you with Luke. It's very, very important. In Luke chapter 9, I'm going to tell you this about Jesus and his disciples. There are 12 of them. And in Luke chapter 10, there are 70 disciples they talk about in verse 1. And then in Luke chapter 15, they talked about the lost and found. The lost and found was a very good one. It's a prodigal son. I'm going to give you familiar stories here now because many of us know them. We all know the prodigal son. We know the brother was asked to stay home. I mean, he had his friends with him. Let's read a little bit of that because I want you to see that before I bring it to a place where I think I want to make some applications in our lives every day. In Luke chapter 15, from verse 1, it has to be the parable of the lost sheep. This man had sheep. One went away. What did he do? He closed the door, went looking for it. That sheep left home, went away. He secured the rest, but he went looking for it. Keep that in your mind. He went looking for the lost sheep. Well, if you know anything about sheep, because my brother had one, after he trained it for a period of time, he was able to tie the rope around my brother's neck, just smooth, calmly, loosely, and let it go. He trained it to go straight home. My brother was able to train his sheep to go straight home. I had a goat. My father gave us all a pet, an animal. So mine was a goat. I didn't know the difference between sheep and goat, but I learned it then. I tried tying the same rope around my goat head and say, follow the sheep. Go ahead, go home. My sheep never showed up. My goat never showed up. I went looking all over the place just to see if I can get my goat. I wandered everywhere possible. Have you seen? Have you seen? Have you seen? No. One fellow said, oh, there's this goat around the corner there, and he was eating somebody's plant or whatever he was doing. So I hurried around there. It was the wrong goat. And had to look two other places, and I finally found my goat. I discovered that the mentality of a sheep is very different from the mentality of a goat. That was my learning experience. So if somebody ever asked me, what kind of animal would you want to be? I would never admit a goat. I'll always choose my brother's type sheep because it was obedient. Many of us who grew up in church, understood who God is all about, have decided that we are now going to start behaving like goats. We don't know how to find our way back to God. I had a laughter the other day. One of my old buddies, I said to him, are you still sheeping or are you still goating? And that's the expression I use him. He said, no, I'm half sheep and half goat. I said, I've never met a half sheep nor half goat. You're creating your own. He said, no. Sometimes I feel like this person who loved God a whole lot, and another time I don't talk to him. I said, sheeping and goating. And then finally I said to him, it's time to make a choice. Are you going to be sheep or are you still going to be goat? He said, I'll talk to you a couple of weeks and I'll let you know about that. He said, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get me back into the sheepfold because we used to be there together. Did you understand that? There's some of you sitting here today that might very well be true of. You used to be the sheep. But since then, you joined the companies of the goat. And now you thought it's hard to go back. It's not that hard after all. It's not that hard. Amen. Okay, don't be so. You can say amen once in a while. Okay, so as I was reading, the lost sheep. What happened to that sheep? They went looking for it. The shepherd went looking for the sheep because he knew that the nature of that animal there, somebody has to find him, in this case. Then we have the lost coin. Where was that coin? It was actually lost in the house. In the house. One wandered from the fold, came back there, right? This one was lost in the house. So there are things that happen in the house that nobody will ever know that we still lost there, but we're in the house. One fellow I met years ago, we had this conversation, and I said, how did you grow up? What was your growing up like? He said, honestly, man, I gave my life to Christ when I was a young boy. I was a good boy. My mother used to rub my head and say, you are a good boy. That's what he said to me. I said, oh, I'm happy to hear that. He said, but I tell you, man, I go to church all of my life. Didn't do anything really, really, really seriously wrong. I said, oh, okay. And then he said, but I never really made a commitment of my life to Christ. He said that to me. He said, Burnett boy, I don't think I want to become a Christian anytime soon. I said, why? He said, when I look at the hypocrisy of the people within the church, I realize if I have to become one like that one, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do that. If I'm going to do it, let me do it right. It took him many, many, many years. And then several years I hadn't seen him. And finally we ran into each other and said, I remember the story. I said to him, are you a lost coin? I said to him, are you a lost coin? He said, what do you mean? I said, remember the lost and found in the Bible? He said, oh yeah, we did that Sunday school class. I said, remember what happened, that's lost coin? He said, yeah, that was lost in the house. Oh, he said, you're trying to tell me I'm in the house, but I'm lost. I said, yeah, I'm trying to make that point. I said, I don't think I want you to become lost like that anymore. Change from being that to something else. He said, I'll think about it seriously because I'm getting down in age. That was his statement. He's getting down in age. He said, I don't want to go and meet God, if I'm on the other side. So maybe it's good for me to consider that. And he said, I promise you that I will consider it seriously. We exchanged numbers. It may have been 3-4 months after that. I tried getting a hold of him, and the answering machine came and says, this number is no longer in service. So I said to the Lord, it would be good for him to call me from whatever number he has. And I have, up to today, I have not heard from him. Up to today. And I'm talking about a long time ago. There are times we postpone things. We might be in the house and we are lost. The last one, the lost and found. Then, from verse 11, it's called the lost son. We all know the prodigal son. You know that story about the prodigal son? And one day, one gentleman, one fellow in this house, in fact, let's read a piece of that. It says, verse 11, a certain man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, notice it is the younger. They didn't say the older, but the younger. Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. So he divided them their livelihood. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all of his things together, journeyed into a far country, and there wasted his possessions with the prodigal living. But when he had spent all, there arose a severe famine in the land, and he began to be in want. Then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed swine. For he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods and with the swine food, and no one gave him anything. But, that is a good word sometimes, but when he came to himself, I like that one. When he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have bread enough to eat and to spare, and I perish here with hunger? And then he said, I will arise and go to my father, and said, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I'm no more worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. The rest of the story I'll tell you, but there are 3 things I want to tell you in that one verse is this. And when he came to himself, the part of you and I that will cause us to make that statement is his mind became activated. His mind was active. When he came to himself, when he rationalized and processed all the information I know, all the things I've been told, all the things I've been exposed to, all the other choices I've made. And I think I need to start making better choices because I left home, spent everything, blew it all there, and now I'm hungry eating pig's food. He rationalized it. He understood that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. As you and I think, so are we. That's the fact. So he came to himself mentally. He had a mental adjusting program happening with him, but it wasn't enough. And here's another part in the same verse. And he said, I will arise. What became activated for him? His will. Mental was great, but his will got activated. In other words, whenever you and I make a choice, our wills must be activated. You got to do it willingly. In other words, according to your will. Or wills. This old lady used to say, is your will home? She just said it to me one day. And I said, is my will home? I don't have any children. I don't have a child or son named Will. She said, so your will isn't home. I said, what will? Then she explained, your will is that part of you that when it's at home, you get to do everything in a hurry and you make sure you're responsible. Your will is the thing that you use all the time to do things. And your will is not home. That means you don't do anything. You choose not to use the will. When you're young, people can tell you some stories and you sometimes forget them all. But with me, I tend to replay them a lot. And I use them a lot when my children are young. I used to say, is your will home today? I said, and my son said, there comes that again, his Will's story. And then I tell him what I mean. I said, what's your will like today? Why? And because I'm about to ask them to go cut the grass. You get it? Now, I can say to them, can I ask you to do me a favor? But they're living in the same place. I cut enough grass. You at old age. I said, in my head, I'm thinking. So I said, hey, everybody, after breakfast, they will home today. And in my head, I have assignments for every single one of them. Why? Because I just want to make sure that no 2 persons die in this house. The mother and father doing everything. They live there, they eat there, they sleep there, they bathe there, whatever else. Say, Will must be home sometimes. And they say, okay, what is Will supposed to do today? When they finally get around to it, they say, Will is doing, A is doing that, B is doing that, C is doing that, and the D, nah, yeah, you're doing that one too. 4 children we have. What's my point? Whether the will was home or not, I just activated their will. That's all I did. I allowed the will to get up, make up the bed, I'd have a quick breakfast, we'll go do the work, and come back home. And I promised them, if you decide to go and do this immediately because it's now 11 o'clock in the day and you should have been up earlier, blah, 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 blah. Then I said to them, if you do that, when you come back in, I'll have breakfast made for you. Two of the four will say, all right, they go out, do their thing, come back home, breakfast done for them. The others will say, all right, we're staying inside until breakfast. I said, nope, you're not eating breakfast until the other ones come back inside.